I was wrong. Cashin's voice trembled as he stared across the restaurant. His eyes, once cold and commanding, now glistened with shame. I froze and my hands were shaking, my tray trembling as I stared at him. You what? I barely whispered, my heart hammering so loud I thought the whole restaurant could hear it. Cashin's eyes were wide, glistening with something I didn't recognize. Shame? Desperation? I was wrong, he said, voice trembling. I fired you, humiliated you, believed lies about you. Lies that weren't yours to carry. I was wrong, Zara. I felt my chest tighten. You don't understand, I spat, my voice shaking with months of anger and humiliation. Do you have any idea what you did to my life? I do now, he said, taking a step closer. And I'm here, to make it right. Something inside me wanted to laugh, wanted to scream, wanted to run. Anger, disbelief, and a strange, fragile hope collided inside me. You have to prove it, I said, my voice barely steady. Because words are nothing now. He nodded, tears in his eyes, and whispered, I will. I swear. I'll spend the rest of my life proving it. And in that moment, as I stared at the man who had destroyed my life, and now knelt, broken and honest, before me, I realized, this was only the beginning. Before we dive into this story, I want to know, where are you watching from right now? Drop your city or country in the comments, I'd love to see how far this story reaches. It amazes me how stories like Zara's can connect us all, no matter where we are, and I can't wait to read every single one of your replies. My name is Zara Laywood, and at 26, I've learned that life can kneel you before the world, whether you want it to or not. But nothing prepared me for the moment a billionaire, the Cashin ward, walked into the bright, noisy restaurant where I worked, and suddenly dropped to his knees in front of me. For a few seconds, the place went silent. Forks hovered midair. Drinks stopped halfway to lips. People whispered like a wave rolling across the room. I froze with a tray in my hand, my apron crooked from the morning rush, my breath trapped in my chest. My heart pounded so loudly I could hear it. Cashin looked up at me with eyes full of guilt. The same man who fired me months ago, ruthlessly, coldly, publicly, was now kneeling on the hard floor like he was begging for air. His expensive suit brushed the dirty tiles. The diamond watch on his wrist caught the overhead lights, throwing reflections across the room like little pieces of shame. Zara, please, he whispered. I was wrong. My hands shook. I wasn't ready for this. I wasn't ready for the memories he dragged back, the humiliation, the eviction, the lies, the stolen bracelet I never touched. The day he believed his wife over me without asking a single question. The day he threw me out like I was nothing more than trash on his pristine doorstep. Get up, I muttered, barely able to breathe. Don't do this here. But Cashin didn't move. His face looked tired, worn, older than when I last saw him. Something told me he wasn't here for drama. He wasn't here to save face. He was here because something had broken him. Something huge. Something irreversible. People at the tables leaned in closer. Some pulled out their phones. I felt my cheeks burning, my legs trembling. I wanted to walk away, to hide in the kitchen, to disappear before I drowned under everyone's stares. But my feet refused to move. My past stood there in front of me, breathing, kneeling, begging. Zara, I came to make things right, he said. His voice cracked like glass. I didn't know. I didn't know what she was doing. I didn't know she lied. My chest tightened. The anger I buried deep rose like smoke. I swallowed hard, trying to control the storm boiling inside me. I felt every customer waiting, watching, ready to judge every word from my mouth. Then something snapped inside me, something sharp, something fierce, something I never allowed myself to feel in front of him. I threw the tray onto the nearest table, stepped closer, and stared down at him with all the pain he caused me. My voice came out louder than I ever expected. You do not get to say that to me now. A huge gasp swept through the restaurant, followed by the loudest applause I had ever heard in my life. And Cashin Ward still didn't stand up. Wow, that was intense, right? If you're feeling the emotions just like Zara, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who loves stories that make you laugh, cry, and gasp all at once. Your support helps me bring more powerful stories like this straight to you, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments too. Before that humiliating day in the restaurant, before the kneeling and the applause, my life looked completely different. Months earlier, I lived inside Cashin Ward's mansion, a place so big it felt like the walls breathed money. The hallways sparkled, the floors shined like mirrors, and every step echoed a reminder that I did not belong there. My job was simple: wake early, clean silently, smile politely, and avoid the wife. Everyone whispered that warning when I first arrived. At the time, I didn't understand why. Marilyn Ward was gorgeous in the kind of way magazines loved: icy blue eyes, bleach blonde hair, a slim figure wrapped in designer clothes. But beneath the beauty, there was something sharp. Something cold. Something predatory. The first week, I tried my best to stay invisible. I cleaned rooms before sunrise, polished tables until my fingers ached, and kept my head down. Cashin hardly noticed me then, always busy, always distracted, always distant. But his father, Eamon Ward, noticed everything. A gentle old man with trembling hands and a soft voice, he lived on the quiet side of the mansion, where the sun hit the windows in the mornings. Eamon became the only peaceful part of my day. He'd sit in his rocking chair while I dusted his shelves, telling me stories about his late wife, or asking about my dreams. He said I reminded him of her: kind eyes, brave spirit, stubborn heart. I didn't know whether to believe him, but his words gave me something I hadn't felt in a long time: safety. Those mornings became my favorite moments. Eamon would laugh softly at his own jokes, and I'd pretend not to notice when he slipped extra bills into the cookie jar for emergencies. Marilyn hated it. She hated when Eamon smiled. She hated when anyone liked anyone more than her. She especially hated when Cashin spoke to me politely. One quiet afternoon, I was cleaning the hallway mirror upstairs when Marilyn appeared behind me. Her reflection stared back at me, arms crossed, expression tight enough to cut glass. I turned quickly and apologized out of instinct, even though I'd done nothing wrong. She stepped closer, inspecting me like I was a stain on her expensive rug. "You walk too loudly," she said. "You breathe too loudly. You do everything too loudly." I didn't respond. I couldn't. Her tone made me feel like shrinking into the walls. Hours later, the mansion erupted with noise. Voices echoed from Marilyn's closet, sharp and frantic. She screamed for Cashin, for security, for anyone who would listen. I rushed toward the sound, heart pounding, confused and scared. I reached the doorway just as she flung open a velvet jewelry box, her face twisted in rage. "It's gone," she shrieked. "My diamond bracelet, my $10,000 bracelet." Cashin arrived behind me, looking exhausted and irritated. "Marilyn, calm down," he said. "It's probably misplaced." "No," she snarled, spinning around so fast her hair whipped across her shoulder. Her finger shot out like an arrow. "It wasn't misplaced." She pointed directly at me. "She stole it." For a second, the whole world felt frozen. Marilyn's finger stayed pointed at me like it was glued in place. Her voice pierced the air, repeating the accusation over and over, making it echo as if the walls themselves believed her. My heart pounded so hard my knees trembled. I'd never even touched her jewelry box. Cashin stepped forward slowly, rubbing his forehead like he was trying to push away a migraine. His eyes moved between us, between her rage and my shock, and the conflict in his expression tightened something deep inside my chest. I needed him to believe me. I needed someone to believe me. But he already looked exhausted, as if siding with the truth required too much energy. "Marilyn," he said quietly, "are you sure? Zara has always been respectful." Marilyn gasped dramatically, pressing a hand to her chest. "Oh, so now I'm the liar," she cried. "Cashin, I can't believe you're defending her over me." "Me? Your wife." She stepped closer to him, shaking her head, tears forming too quickly to be real. I swallowed hard and forced myself to speak. "Sir, I didn't take anything." I swear on my life. I don't even go near her jewelry drawers unless I'm dusting the top, and I always wait until she's home. I would never steal. My voice cracked, but I tried to stay steady. Marilyn's eyes darted toward me like knives. Look at her, she hissed. She's lying. Obviously lying. Why else would my bracelet be gone? Why else would a bracelet worth more than her entire life suddenly disappear? She grabbed Cashin's arm, leaning into his side like she needed physical support from the trauma. Cashin sighed heavily, the kind of sigh that says someone is tired of fighting, tired of thinking, tired of being pulled in two directions. His shoulders slumped. His gaze drifted away from me as if he didn't want to meet my eyes. My heart dropped to my stomach. Downstairs, the household staff had gathered. Word spread quickly through big houses, and whispers rose from the doorway. The chef, the gardeners, the cleaners, all stood watching, their faces filled with pity, curiosity, and fear. I felt like I was on display, like my dignity was being peeled away layer by layer in front of people who barely even knew my name. Cashin, Marilyn sobbed, if you don't do something right now, I won't feel safe in my own home. I could be next. Maybe she'll steal more. Maybe she already has. Her tears hit the floor, perfectly timed, perfectly dramatic. She leaned her head on his shoulder like a helpless victim. I stepped forward desperately. Please, I whispered. Sir, please listen. I didn't do this. I would never betray your trust. I came here to work, not to steal. Please, don't let her ruin my life. I felt my throat tightening, but I refused to cry. Cashin lifted his eyes slowly and looked at me again, just for a moment. There was guilt. There was doubt. There was something human flickering there. But before I could breathe, Marilyn's grip tightened on his arm, pulling his attention back to her. And in that moment, he made his choice. Cashin turned toward the staff, his expression cold. Everyone gather, he said. His voice was low, but it carried through the mansion like thunder. Workers stepped closer, forming a circle around us. My hands began to shake. He exhaled sharply. Zara, he said, looking at me without emotion, you're fired. Effective immediately. The room gasped. And the world tilted beneath my feet. The mansion's gates shut behind me with a heavy clang that felt like a final sentence. I stood on the sidewalk with nothing but a duffel bag and the clothes on my back. My throat burned, my eyes stung, and the cold breeze cut through my thin uniform. The place I had lived, worked, and trusted had erased me in seconds. I walked for hours without direction. Shame clung to me like a heavy coat. Everywhere I looked, I felt people staring, whispering, judging, though most weren't even paying attention. But humiliation has a way of making every shadow feel threatening. My chest tightened each time the memory replayed, Cashin firing me without hesitation, without mercy, without truth. By evening, exhaustion hit me like a wave. I sat on a curb, hugging myself, unsure where to go. I had no savings. Most of my money had gone to help my younger siblings back home. I had left everything inside the mansion, my textbooks, clothes, even the little journal my mother gave me. All taken from me in a moment I didn't deserve. While I sat there shivering, an old sedan slowed nearby. A window rolled down, and I heard a familiar voice. Zara? Is that you? It was Mrs. Darlene Abbott, my neighbor from the small apartment complex I lived in before the mansion job. A retired school librarian with gentle eyes and a warm, grandmotherly voice. She pulled over, got out, and rushed toward me without hesitation. Honey, what happened to you? She asked, lifting my chin to see my tears. I couldn't speak at first. I just cried, letting all the fear, betrayal, and loneliness pour out. She wrapped her arms around me like she'd been waiting to do it. Minutes later, she said softly, "Come home with me. I've got an extra room. You're not sleeping outside tonight." Her kindness hit me harder than the cold. In a world where people with everything had thrown me away, someone with almost nothing opened her door without asking for anything in return. She drove me back to her small apartment, made me warm soup, handed me a blanket, and told me to rest. It was the first time all day I felt safe. Over the next week, I searched for jobs relentlessly. I walked from store to store, asking if they were hiring. Some said no. Some said maybe. Some glanced at my wrinkled clothes and said nothing at all. But Mrs. Abbott always encouraged me, reminding me that storms don't last forever, even if they feel endless. One night, exhausted from rejection, I sat on her couch scrolling through my phone. I wasn't looking for anything, just trying to distract myself from my thoughts. But fate didn't want to give me a break. A notification popped up from a gossip page that often followed wealthy families. At first, I didn't pay attention. Then something familiar caught my eye. A photo. Marilyn Ward smiling at a charity gala. And on her wrist was the exact same diamond bracelet she claimed I stole. My breath caught. My hands went numb. The room spun around me. Because right there in the picture, she was proudly showing off the missing bracelet that destroyed my life. While I tried to rebuild my life in Mrs. Abbott's tiny apartment, the Ward mansion simmered with secrets I didn't yet know. Marilyn's behavior grew stranger by the day. Staff whispered that she spent hours alone in her walk-in closet, always locking the door. Others claimed she took long trips without telling anyone where she was going, or why she returned in a worse mood each time. Cashin barely noticed at first. He was buried in work, juggling meetings, investments, and board decisions. But the mansion had a way of revealing things when no one expected it. One evening, while reviewing financial reports, he frowned at an unusual number on the screen. A missing amount, small enough to be overlooked, but large enough to leave a shadow. His accountants labeled it a misplacement, but something about it bothered him. Over the next week, more small discrepancies appeared. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that screamed crime. But Cashin felt a quiet unease growing in the back of his mind. Money didn't just vanish, not in his world. Especially not from accounts only accessible by two people, himself and Marilyn. He watched her more closely, noticing how she avoided eye contact at dinner, how she snapped at staff, how she laughed too loudly at things that weren't funny. Still, Cashin tried to dismiss the feeling. He had always believed Marilyn was dramatic, not dangerous. And after firing me, he tried to forget the entire embarrassing ordeal. But guilt lingered, clinging to him like a stubborn shadow. He remembered how scared I looked that day. How my voice trembled. Sometimes he wondered if he should have questioned things more, but Marilyn always found a way to shut down those doubts. One afternoon, while searching for old business contracts inside Marilyn's office, he noticed an unfamiliar drawer slightly open. It was usually locked. Something inside caught his eye, a neatly folded stack of papers with red ink scribbled along the edges. He hesitated, glancing over his shoulder. Marilyn was out shopping, the house was quiet. Curiosity tugged at him. He pulled the drawer open further. Inside was a collection of documents that didn't belong there, bank statements, check stubs, and a set of notes written in Marilyn's distinctive handwriting. Some pages had numbers crossed out aggressively, others had doodles in the margins. But one particular folded sheet stood out, thin, wrinkled, handled too many times. He picked it up carefully and unfolded it. His breath halted. It was a confession letter. Stating that I, Zara Laywood, had stolen the diamond bracelet, and worse, that I had been taking money for months. The letter was poorly written, full of inconsistencies, and signed with a shaky signature meant to look like mine. But Cashin recognized the handwriting immediately. He had seen that curved, looping style 1,000 times. It was Marilyn's. His stomach dropped. Shock pulsed through him as he stared at the page. Why would she forge something like this? Why would she need such a letter? And most unsettling of all, why was it hidden? The mansion hallway creaked behind him. He spun around quickly, heart pounding. Footsteps approached. He still held the forged confession in his hand, wide open, impossible to hide in time. And the footsteps were getting closer. Cashin barely slept that night. The forged confession letter haunted him, replaying in his mind over and over like a broken film reel. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Marilyn's handwriting, my name written in her careful loops, the staged words of guilt, the shaky signature she tried to mimic. He felt sick. Something inside him whispered that he'd made a terrible mistake. By morning, he had made a decision he never imagined making about his own wife. He would investigate her. Quietly. Secretly. He couldn't confront her without proof. Marilyn had a way of turning every question into an attack, every concern into an argument, every doubt into a crisis. And Cashin wasn't ready for that storm yet. He needed answers first, real ones. He contacted Elias Monroe, an old friend who worked as a private investigator. Elias was calm, observant, and painfully honest. The kind of man who could read a person with one glance. When Cashin explained the situation over the phone, Elias was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "I'll come by tonight." "But if you're right, Cashin, this is bigger than stolen jewelry." That evening, Elias arrived through a back entrance, avoiding any staff who might talk too much. Cashin walked him through everything, the missing funds, the forged letter, Marilyn's sudden mood swings. Elias took notes, nodding slowly, occasionally raising an eyebrow. "You should have questioned things sooner," he said quietly. Cashin swallowed hard at the truth of it. The investigation started gently. Elias installed hidden monitoring software on Cashin's financial accounts to track unusual transfers. He searched for patterns in Marilyn's phone records, emails, and recent purchases. For several days, nothing groundbreaking appeared. Just minor red flags, small withdrawals, strange cash purchases, late-night movements around the mansion. Enough to feel wrong, but not enough to accuse her. Cashin's guilt grew heavier with every hour. He remembered the way I cried that day, how I begged him to believe me. The way he dismissed me as if my words held no weight. "I ruined her life," he finally muttered one night, head in his hands. Elias didn't disagree. He simply said, "Then fix it." A week into the investigation, Elias noticed something odd. Marilyn frequently locked herself in her closet for long periods. At first, he assumed it was vanity or secrecy. But then he saw that she often entered with bags and left without them. Cashin didn't even know she'd added an extra lock to that closet. Elias decided to take a closer look. One afternoon, while Marilyn was out at a spa appointment, Elias examined the closet. He scanned the walls, the shelves, the corners. Nothing unusual, until he spotted a tiny glint near the top hinge of the door. A reflection that didn't match the lighting in the room. He leaned closer. A micro camera, disguised in the metal hinge. He found another in the ceiling molding. And one more behind the vanity mirror frame. His pulse quickened. He pulled out a portable monitor and connected the camera feed. For a moment, there was only static. Then the screen flickered. And there, crystal clear, was Marilyn on video, digging through Cashin's safe, stuffing cash into designer purses, slipping jewelry into hidden compartments, laughing like someone who believed she'd never be caught. Elias froze. Cashin stared at the screen, jaw clenched, face pale. Video proof. Of everything. Elias clicked the next file. But before the video played, a notification popped up. Camera activated, live feed. Someone had just stepped into Marilyn's closet. Cashin waited until the household fell quiet before entering the master bedroom. Marilyn sat at her vanity, brushing her golden hair in slow, deliberate strokes. In the reflection, her smile flickered, soft, practiced, dangerous. "Cashin," she said sweetly, setting down the brush. "You're home early." "We need to talk," he replied, his voice low and steady, though his chest thudded with dread. She turned, crossing her legs delicately. "About what?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he placed a black USB drive on the dresser. The PI had sent it that morning. Marilyn's eyes twitched, just for half a second, barely noticeable to anyone who didn't know her patterns. But Cashin had learned to process every micro-expression. "You hid cameras," he said. "In your closet." She swallowed. "Cameras?" Why would I? Don't. His voice cut through her performance. I've seen the footage. For the first time, Marilyn's mask cracked. Her shoulders dropped, her smile dying. But she didn't panic. Marilyn Hale didn't panic, she recalculated. She rose slowly and approached him, heels tapping softly on the marble floor. When she reached him, she placed a hand gently on his chest. So what if you saw something, she whispered, her lips almost brushing his jaw. People make mistakes. You've made mistakes too. He stepped back. She followed, unbuttoning the top of her satin robe. Cashin, we can forget this. Start over. Her voice grew breathy, sugary, persuasive. I know how to make you feel good. Better than she ever did. Zara. The name hung in the air like poison. Cashin recoiled, disgust pushing against his ribs. You think seducing me will erase the truth? Marilyn laughed softly, brushing her fingers along the back of his neck. Baby, you're confused. Tired. Overwhelmed. You've been grieving Zara's betrayal, and now you think you found something shocking. I know what theft looks like, he snapped. She stiffened. He took a breath. I know what lies look like. Marilyn's face chilled instantly, like ice settling over water. The warmth vanished, replaced by something cold and reptilian. So what now? She asked flatly. You plan to divorce me? Ruin me publicly? Destroy your precious reputation because of petty footage? It's not petty, he said. You stole from me. You framed Zara. You destroyed someone's life. And yes, I want answers. For a moment, Marilyn just stared at him, and then she laughed. Loud, sharp, humorless. Oh, Cashin. You naive, beautiful fool. She stepped back, arms crossed, eyes blazing with something feral. You think I married you out of love, she hissed. Cashin's breath stilled. You think I cared about our partnership? Our plans? Your morals? She marched toward him, her voice sharpening into a knife. I married you for the money. Her words detonated between them. I never loved you, she spat. Not for a second. The room felt colder. Even the air seemed to withdraw. Cashin stepped back as her confession struck deeper than he expected, deeper than he wanted to admit. Marilyn grabbed her purse, yanked the bedroom door open, and turned back with a furious glare. You want the truth? Fine. But you won't survive it. Then she slammed the door and stormed out of the mansion, leaving Cashin standing in the silence, shaken, betrayed, and terrified of what she might do next. Cashin didn't sleep that night. Or the morning after. He sat alone in his home office, the lights off, the footage replaying again and again on the screen in front of him, Marilyn slipping jewelry into her purse, transferring files, forging documents with Zara's name on them. Every second felt like a blade turning deeper into his chest. He had destroyed a woman who never wronged him. Fired her publicly. Humiliated her. And when she tried to defend herself, he'd shut her down. All because Marilyn had whispered the right lies. By noon, he felt the weight of it all pressing on his lungs. He could barely breathe. A soft knock sounded at the door. Cashin? His father stepped inside, gray hair neatly combed, wearing the same calm expression he'd carried since Cashin was a boy. You missed our meeting. Cashin rubbed his face. I'm dealing with something. His father took one long look at him, red eyes, unshaven jaw, shaking hands, and closed the door quietly behind him. Tell me, he said. Cashin told him everything. The PI. The footage. Marilyn's confession. Zara. When he finished, his father sat down heavily across from him, expression unreadable. I failed, Cashin whispered. I ruined someone's life because I believed a liar. For a long moment, silence settled between them like dust. Then his father spoke softly, with the firmness Cashin had grown up fearing and trusting. Son, listen to me. You cannot undo what has already happened. But you can fix what you broke. At least, you can try. Cashin swallowed hard. If she even wants to hear me out. That's not your choice, his father replied gently. Your responsibility is to face what you've done and do whatever you can to make it right. No matter how humbling it is. Cashin looked down. The humiliation was already burning under his skin. His father rested a hand on his shoulder. Go find her. Cashin nodded, but inside, panic swirled. Zara had vanished after losing her job. No social media updates. No messages to former coworkers. She'd disappeared like a ghost. The PI had tried to track her for days, but all he found were dead ends, until he finally located a new address, belonging to a neighbor who'd taken Zara in temporarily. Cashin left the mansion without telling anyone where he was going. He drove for hours, rehearsing what he'd say. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I destroyed you, and you didn't deserve it. But every version felt too small for the damage he'd caused. When he reached the address, the neighbor informed him kindly that Zara no longer lived there. She'd moved out 2 days earlier, trying to rebuild her life quietly. Cashin's heart sank. Do you know where she works? The neighbor hesitated, then nodded. She took a job, waitressing. Just until she gets back on her feet. Waitressing. Cashin felt something in him twist painfully. Zara, who once handled multi-million-dollar accounts, reduced to serving tables because of him. Where, he asked. The neighbor wrote down the name of the restaurant. Cashin froze when he saw it. It was the same upscale restaurant from the opening scene, the place where he'd celebrated a major company milestone, the same night Zara had been fired. The same place where the entire elite circle gathered. Where he once toasted to success while Zara's world collapsed. His pulse quickened. He knew exactly where she'd be. And he wasn't ready. But he had no choice. Cashin turned and walked back to his car, heart slamming against his ribs as the truth settled in. Zara was working at the restaurant. And she was about to see him walk through the door. The lunch rush had finally begun to slow, leaving only a few tables occupied. Zara wiped down a counter, humming quietly under her breath, a habit she'd picked up to keep herself anchored on long days. The restaurant smelled of roasted garlic and warm bread, comforting in a way her old life never had been. Her apron was worn but clean, her hair tied back neatly. She looked calmer. Not healed, not yet, but stitched together enough to stand. Zara, you're a lifesaver, Mia, one of the servers, said as she passed by. If you cover table 6 for me, I'll handle dessert for your section. Zara smiled. Deal. Go take your break. Since arriving here, she'd slowly built something resembling a support system, Mia, who always had snacks in her bag, Luis, the line cook who pretended not to care but saved her the best leftovers, and Clara, the manager who enforced rules with the softness of a grandmother. They didn't know her full story, and she wasn't ready to tell it, but they treated her like she belonged. For the first time in months, Zara felt like the world wasn't actively trying to crush her. She picked up a tray of glasses and began walking toward table 6. A soft ache lingered in her chest whenever she thought of the mansion, of the life she'd lost, but she pushed it back, one shift at a time. Mia popped her head around the corner. By the way, Zara, you're glowing today. Got plans after work? Zara laughed under her breath. My big exciting plan is laundry. Mia groaned. Ugh. Adulthood. The others laughed, and Zara felt warmth spread through her. These were small moments, but they mattered. They reminded her she could still find joy, even in a life that hadn't gone the way she expected. She turned toward the next table, tray steady in her hands. The front door chimed. Zara didn't pay it much attention at first. Customers came and went every few minutes. But she noticed how Clara straightened slightly at the podium, the way she only did when someone wealthy or important walked in. Maybe a politician. Or a celebrity. Zara didn't even look up. She balanced a water pitcher, ready to refill glasses. Clara's voice carried softly through the room. "Good afternoon, sir. Table for one?" No response. A silence filled the space, just a second too long. Zara frowned and turned, instinctively sensing something was off. And then she saw him. Cashin Ward. Standing in the doorway. He wasn't wearing a suit today. Just a dark sweater, hands in his pockets, hair slightly unkempt as if he hadn't slept. He looked older, somehow. Or maybe just weighed down. The kind of tired you can't disguise. Time stalled. The sound of clinking dishes blurred into nothing. Zara's fingers went numb around the tray. She felt her heart drop so hard it hurt, then rise, swift, sharp, panicked, into her throat. She froze mid-step. Her breath caught. Cashin's eyes lifted slowly, and locked onto hers. Recognition flickered across his face, followed by something deeper, regret, longing, devastation all at once. The tray tilted dangerously in Zara's hand. She couldn't move. She couldn't speak. She couldn't breathe. And Cashin didn't look away. Zara stood frozen, the tray still in her hands, as Cashin took a tentative step further into the restaurant. The ambient chatter faded to background noise, and every head subtly turned toward the doorway. She forced her gaze downward, pretending to study the table she'd been approaching. She told herself this was just another wealthy customer. Nothing more. Cashin's steps slowed, careful, measured. He didn't move with the arrogance of the past, nor the distance of a man accustomed to privilege. He moved like someone carrying a weight too heavy to drop. Every inch toward her seemed deliberate, as if the air itself would resist his approach. Zara's fingers tightened around the tray. She adjusted a glass with a shake in her hand, clearing her throat softly. "Table 6, she muttered, as if that would be enough to anchor her back in reality. "Don't look. Don't speak. Keep moving. Keep normal." Cashin's eyes, however, did not waver. He stopped just a few feet away, far enough to respect her space, close enough that the tension was suffocating. "Zara," he said quietly, his voice low, rough with emotion. Almost gentle. Almost pleading. Zara bit her lip and nodded without looking at him. She placed the glasses down on the table and tried to focus on the water pitcher. The customers noticed nothing, but she felt every heartbeat echo in her chest, every breath hanging unevenly. "Please, let me explain," Cashin continued. He crouched slightly to reach her eye level, though she refused to meet his gaze. I need you to know the truth." Zara swallowed hard. She wanted to move, to shake her head, to tell him this was the same man who had fired her, humiliated her, destroyed her life. But the words lodged somewhere between throat and stomach. She kept her face neutral, a mask she'd honed over months of survival. Cashin's hands twitched at his sides. He took a step closer. "I know I was wrong. You didn't deserve what happened. Everything I let happen, was because I trusted the wrong person." Her heart raced, threatening to give her away. She tried to ignore him, focusing instead on the napkins, the menus, the mundane tasks she knew would keep her grounded. She couldn't let herself react. Not yet. But Cashin's voice rose suddenly, cutting through the calm hum of the restaurant. "Zara. Please, I need to confess something." The words landed like a hammer. Glasses clinked on tables. Patrons shifted in their seats. Mia glanced over her shoulder, lips parting in surprise. Zara's breath caught. Her tray wobbled dangerously. All at once, the restaurant seemed to shrink, the air thick with anticipation and dread. Time itself slowed. Zara froze completely. Her eyes shot to his, wide and unblinking. Cashin's face was raw with guilt, desperation, and something she hadn't seen before, vulnerability. And in that moment, Zara knew one thing, the moment of reckoning she had avoided for months had arrived. The restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Patrons murmured softly, forks paused mid-bite, chairs creaking as people shifted uneasily. Zara's fingers tightened on the tray. She couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't think. All eyes were on them. She wished she could vanish, but she was rooted to the spot, facing the man who had once destroyed her life. Cashin's shoulders slumped. The confident, untouchable aura he once wore was gone. Guilt pressed down on him like a weight too heavy to lift. He ran a hand through his hair, glancing briefly at the floor before looking straight into Zara's eyes. "I need you to know everything," he began. His voice was low, tense, edged with shame. "Marilyn, she lied. She stole from me. She forged documents. She framed you. The bracelet, the money, the letter, none of it was true. It was all her." Zara's jaw dropped slightly. Her tray wobbled, barely saved by her other hand. She wanted to speak, to ask him if this was a trick, a test, a cruel joke. But no words came. Her chest tightened, throat dry. The air felt thick, heavy with emotion and disbelief. Cashin swallowed hard. I fired you. Publicly. Humiliated you. Believed her lies over your word. And his voice cracked. I should have protected you. I failed. And I am so sorry. A hush fell over the room. Some customers shifted nervously, uncertain whether to leave or eavesdrop. Others whispered, exchanging glances. The weight of the confession filled every corner. Zara's heart pounded so loudly she could barely hear herself think. She opened her mouth, then closed it. What could she possibly say? Years of rage, humiliation, despair, all trapped behind a fragile wall of disbelief. Finally, all she could do was step back, tray clattering lightly as she let herself lean on the counter for support. Then, as the restaurant absorbed the tension, a loud, mocking voice cut through the air. "Wow, what a dramatic scene," sneered a man at a nearby table. He leaned back, smirking. "You poor girl, working here in this dump now, and this rich jerk comes crawling back. Pathetic." Cashin's eyes snapped to the man. The calm, apologetic demeanor vanished in an instant. His jaw tightened, nostrils flaring. The man's words, intended to humiliate Zara further, ignited something fierce and protective in him. He strode forward, every movement deliberate, controlled, radiating authority. Patrons leaned back, sensing the storm about to break. Cashin stopped just in front of the man, eyes blazing. "You listen to me," he said, voice low but sharp enough to carry across the dining room. "She deserves respect. Every ounce of it. And if you can't treat her with decency, you will leave. Now." The man faltered, startled. Whispers filled the room. Zara's mouth fell open, not in shock at Cashin, but at the sudden courage he displayed, courage she had never expected from the man who once abandoned her. Cashin's gaze returned to her, steady, sincere, full of shame, regret, and an unspoken promise. But before Zara could respond, the man muttered under his breath, louder than he intended, "Rich men always forgive themselves, don't they?" Cashin's expression darkened, hand twitching near his side as if he could snap something, or someone, instantly. The room went deadly silent. The restaurant held its collective breath. Patrons whispered quietly to one another, leaning in, trying not to miss a word. Zara stayed frozen behind the counter, tray clutched in her hands like a shield, eyes wide and unblinking. Cashin's presence was magnetic, drawing every gaze as if the room itself were holding him accountable. He took a deep breath, steadying himself, trying to make sense of the words he had rehearsed for nights he hadn't slept. "Zara," he began, his voice low but carrying clearly, "I've said some things, done some things, and they were wrong. You need to hear the truth, the whole truth, from me, not from lies, gossip, or manipulation." Zara's heart thumped painfully in her chest. She didn't move, didn't speak, didn't breathe too loudly. She had spent months trying to protect herself from him, from his world, from the arrogance that had destroyed her life. And now, he was speaking with a vulnerability that shocked her. "Marilyn Ward, my wife," he continued, his eyes flicking toward the door for a moment before returning to hers, "she stole from me. From our accounts, from our safe. She took jewelry, money, and she forged documents, letters, and evidence. She framed you. Every single thing she accused you of, it was a lie. A hush fell over the room. Patrons exchanged stunned glances. Waitstaff paused mid-step, forks hovering. Even the chef peeked out of the kitchen doorway. The magnitude of his confession settled over the restaurant like a weight, pressing on everyone's chest. Zara felt her legs weaken slightly. She had always known the truth in her bones, but hearing it spoken aloud by the man who had condemned her made it surreal. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Words were too small, too weak for what she had suffered. Cashin swallowed hard, voice raw, tremulous. I didn't believe you when I should have. I let my pride, my trust in the wrong person, blind me to reality. I humiliated you publicly. Fired you. Destroyed your livelihood. His shoulders shook. And I am so deeply sorry. I have spent months regretting it. Months wondering how I could have been so blind. He paused, letting the weight of the words sink in. The silence in the restaurant was thick, almost sacred. Even the mocking customer from earlier seemed frozen, unsure whether to speak. Cashin stepped closer, eyes never leaving hers. I know nothing can erase the pain I caused. Nothing can undo what I did. But I am begging for the chance to make it right. To show you that the truth matters more than anything else. Zara's chest tightened, tears threatening to spill. She wanted to run, to scream, to laugh at the irony of the moment, but she couldn't. She only stared at him, stunned by his raw honesty. Then, slowly, deliberately, Cashin dropped to his knees in front of her. The tray rattled in Zara's hands. Patrons gasped audibly. Chairs scraped. Conversation ceased. Silence pressed down harder than the walls of the mansion ever had. Cashin looked up at her, eyes glistening. Zara. I know I don't deserve it, but please, hear me. Please let me make this right. Zara froze, hands trembling around the tray. Her heart raced like it might leap from her chest. Cashin, please, she whispered, voice cracking. Stand up. Don't do this here. People are watching, please, just, get up. He shook his head slowly, voice steady despite the quiver of emotion. No, Zara. I need you to see this. I need everyone to see that I am accountable. That I was wrong. She interrupted, panic rising. I don't care about anyone else. Please. I can't watch this. Her fingers tightened so hard the tray threatened to slip. She felt a flush of embarrassment, humiliation, her life had been public, private, and now painfully on display all over again. But Cashin remained on his knees. His gaze never wavered, unwavering, raw, and pleading. You deserve to see the truth, Zara. Not empty apologies behind closed doors. Not hiding. I will not stand until you hear me. Zara's chest ached. She wanted to scream, to cry, to flee, to curse. Instead, she shouted, the words spilling over the counter like a torrent. You ruined my life. You believed her lies. You fired me. Humiliated me. And you never even tried to see the truth. The restaurant went completely silent. Patrons froze mid-bite, mid-conversation. Chairs scraped softly as people leaned forward. The whispering stopped. Eyes widened. Forks hovered midair. Every soul present seemed to wait for what would happen next. Cashin's face tightened at her words, but he stayed kneeling. His hands clutched the edge of the counter, his jaw stiff with tension and regret. I know, he said quietly, almost inaudibly. And I'm so sorry. Zara's chest heaved, and then, without thinking, the words burst out again, louder, angrier. You ruined my life. You didn't even give me a chance. Do you understand what that feels like? Her voice carried across the restaurant, bouncing off the walls, echoing through every corner. Patrons shifted uneasily, some whispering, "Oh my God," others exchanging shocked glances. And then, unexpectedly, a ripple of approval spread across the room. Someone clapped softly. Another person joined in. A customer at the bar raised their hand, clapping slowly but deliberately. One by one, the restaurant erupted in applause. People who had only been watching in curiosity now cheered in support. Zara froze again, wide-eyed. The clapping was thunderous, overwhelming, but not in mockery. This was solidarity. Recognition. People acknowledging that she had been wronged. Cashin looked up at her, the vulnerability in his eyes meeting the rising tide of approval. He stayed on his knees, accepting the judgment of the crowd and the honesty of his own shame. Zara's anger mixed with disbelief, fear, and, something she hadn't allowed herself in months, relief. But before she could fully process it, a voice from the back of the restaurant muttered, loud enough for others to hear, dripping with sarcasm. "Well, isn't this rich? The big billionaire groveling in public. Pathetic." Cashin's head snapped toward the man, and the tension in the room went from admiration to electric anticipation. The clapping slowly faded, leaving the restaurant wrapped in heavy silence. Forks clinked against plates, chairs scraped softly against the floor, and patrons held their breath, waiting for what would happen next. Zara's hands shook, her tray pressed tightly against her chest. She couldn't believe this was real. Cashin remained on his knees, chest heaving, eyes glistening with unshed tears. The proud, untouchable man who had once towered over her in the mansion was reduced to raw vulnerability, and she couldn't look away. Every muscle in his body seemed to tremble under the weight of his guilt. "I've been wrong," he said, voice cracking. "Wrong in every way that matters. I humiliated you. I ruined your life. I believed lies instead of truth. And I have no excuse. None at all." Zara swallowed, heart pounding. She wanted to speak, but the words tangled in her throat. She had spent months imagining this moment, but nothing prepared her for seeing him like this, open, broken, confessing everything to the entire restaurant. Cashin's shoulders shook, and finally, tears fell freely. He wiped them hastily but made no effort to hide them. "Zara, I am so sorry. I can't undo what I did. But I swear, everything I can do to make it right, I will. I will fix this. I will fix your life. And if you allow me, I'll spend every day proving I can be better, that I can be the man you deserved from the start." The room was utterly still. Patrons leaned forward, unable to look away. Mia pressed a hand over her mouth. Luis, the line cook, glanced at the wall, shaking his head in disbelief. Even Clara, the manager, looked on, silent and stunned. Zara's chest tightened. She felt the tide of emotions swirl inside her, anger, disbelief, shock, cautious hope. Could this be real? Could he truly feel this deeply, truly regret everything? He stayed on his knees, voice breaking, gaze unwavering. "I don't deserve your forgiveness yet, Zara. I know that. But I will spend every moment until I earn it. I swear on everything I am that I will make this right." Zara wanted to step back, to run, to retreat into the life she had painstakingly rebuilt. Yet something rooted her to the spot. Something about his raw honesty, the shame, the sincerity, the tears, kept her from moving. Cashin's voice softened, almost a whisper now. "I can't promise the past won't haunt us, but I promise that I will never lie to you again. I will never betray you again. And I need you to know that I am willing to do whatever it takes." Then, slowly, deliberately, he reached into his coat pocket. Zara's eyes widened as his hand emerged holding a small, velvet box. The restaurant seemed to freeze again. Patrons leaned forward, holding their collective breath. Every fork, every plate, every murmur had vanished. All that remained was the trembling figure of Cashin Ward on his knees, a small box in his hand, and Zara, frozen in shock. Zara's breath caught in her throat. Her hands trembled around the tray, though she still tried to hide it. The small velvet box in Cashin's hand seemed impossibly heavy, full of meaning she wasn't ready to unpack. Her mind raced. A gasp escaped her lips, sharp and involuntary. Cashin, this isn't money, is it? Her voice wavered, half hope, half accusation. She took a careful step back. You can't. I can't take that. Not like this. Not after everything. Cashin shook his head quickly, the motion almost frantic. No, Zara. It's not money. I'm not buying your forgiveness. I'm not bribing you. His voice was low, steady, but carried an edge of desperation. I swear. Nothing could ever be worth that. This is different. This is me, showing you the truth. My heart. My promise. Zara blinked, confusion swirling through her like a storm. She wanted to recoil, to run, to laugh at the absurdity, but she couldn't. Every instinct screamed at her that this moment was dangerous, delicate, filled with tension she couldn't control. Her eyes flicked to the restaurant crowd. Patrons held their breath. Some whispered, eyes wide, while others remained frozen mid-step, unsure how to react. The air between them pulsed with suspense, taut as a wire about to snap. Zara, Cashin continued, his voice breaking slightly, I've been blind, I've been cruel, and I've been wrong. But I am not lying to you now. Nothing I say, nothing I do, could ever undo the pain I caused, but I want to spend every day trying to make it right. Trying to earn your trust. Trying to show you how much you mean to me. Zara's hands clutched the tray tighter. She wanted to retreat, but something rooted her to the spot, his sincerity, the tears, the vulnerability, the undeniable presence of the man who had once humiliated her, now kneeling, exposed in every way. You don't have to forgive me. You don't have to answer me now. But I can't let this moment pass without telling you how I feel. Without showing you that I am serious, beyond apologies, beyond words, beyond everything I've failed at. Cashin's hand hovered over the velvet box for a heartbeat that felt like eternity. He inhaled sharply, and then, deliberately, he lifted the lid. Zara's eyes widened. Her breath hitched. She blinked rapidly, unable to process what she saw inside. Inside the small box lay a ring. Shimmering under the soft lights of the restaurant, delicate, elegant, impossible to ignore. Its presence made Zara's chest tighten, her throat dry. Questions, doubts, fear, and hope collided violently inside her. The room seemed to fall into silence once more. Patrons leaned forward, every eye on the kneeling man and the woman frozen behind the counter. Zara's mind screamed. This couldn't be real. Was it too soon? Was it sincere? Or was it something else entirely? Cashin's gaze remained locked on hers, unwavering, honest, desperate. Zara's fingers shook as she stared at the ring. Her mind raced with questions she wasn't ready to answer. But Cashin didn't wait. He leaned forward slightly, voice soft but trembling, as if every word cost him something. Zara, he began, eyes never leaving hers, I've loved you for a long time. Long before any of this, the lies, the theft, the humiliation. Long before Marilyn's accusations, before I let my pride blind me. I was afraid to admit it, afraid to lose control, afraid to believe that someone like you could ever see me differently. Zara's chest tightened. Tremors ran through her limbs as her mind struggled to reconcile the man who had ruined her life with the man kneeling before her, vulnerable and raw. She felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them away, unable to fully process the revelation. You loved me. Her voice was barely a whisper, trembling as much as her hands. While I was accused? Cashin nodded slowly, swallowing hard. Yes. And I should have protected you from everything. I should have listened to you. I should have seen the truth. But I failed. And every day since, I've regretted it. Every single day. His hands twitched as if reaching for something beyond the ring, something he couldn't physically give, her trust, her forgiveness, the time he had stolen from her. Zara's mind spun. She wanted to step back, to scream, to cry, to run, but every instinct told her to stay. To hear him. To feel the sincerity radiating from him. The restaurant was silent again, the patrons leaning forward with bated breath. Some had tears glimmering in their eyes, others looked stunned, captivated by the rawness of the moment. Zara's body trembled as the weight of his words sank in. Her heart pounded against her ribs. All the pain, humiliation, anger, and fear collided with something fragile but undeniable, hope. Cashin's voice dropped to a near whisper. I know I don't deserve this moment. I know I've caused you pain that no apology can erase. But I had to tell you. I had to show you, before it's too late. Before I lose my chance to make things right, to make you see how much you mean to me. Zara opened her mouth, ready to respond, to speak the words she hadn't allowed herself to feel yet. But before she could say anything, the restaurant's front door swung open abruptly. A man in a crisp police uniform stepped inside, eyes scanning the room until they landed on Cashin. His voice rang out, sharp and official. Cashin Ward? We need to speak with you. You're required to come with us. Every head in the restaurant turned. Patrons gasped, some standing in surprise. Forks and glasses rattled on tables. Zara's hand flew to her mouth as her body froze. Cashin's eyes widened slightly, but he didn't stand. He remained on his knees, still holding the velvet box, still staring at Zara. Zara's heart leapt into her throat. What could this possibly mean? Why were the police here, now, of all moments? Her trembling fingers gripped the counter. She could barely speak. Cashin, what is happening? The officer stepped closer, the tension in the air thickening to a tangible weight. And in that moment, Zara realized that nothing, neither love, confession, nor redemption, would be simple from here on out. The restaurant seemed to shrink under the weight of the officer's presence. Patrons whispered nervously, glancing between Cashin on his knees and the uniformed man standing authoritatively near the entrance. The soft hum of conversation had evaporated, replaced by a tense silence. Cashin's eyes, still locked on Zara, flicked to the officer. What's going on? His voice was calm, but the tension underlying it made his chest tighten. The officer cleared his throat. Mr. Ward, we received a report filed by your wife, Marilyn Ward. She claims domestic violence, alleging that you assaulted her in your home last week. Cashin froze. His hands clenched into fists. His jaw tightened. What? That's impossible. His voice faltered as confusion and disbelief collided in a tight knot of panic. That's a lie. She's lying. She's done this before. The officer nodded slowly, maintaining professional composure. I understand, sir, but we have to follow procedure. We need to speak with you, formally, at the station. And for now, he reached toward his belt. Cashin's mind spun. He could hardly process the claim. After everything, now Marilyn was using the law against him? How far could she go? How deep did her deception run? He thought of Zara, kneeling there, watching everything unfold. He felt a surge of protective fury. Zara's hands shook. Her heart raced uncontrollably. She hadn't expected this. She had barely begun to process Cashin's apologies, the confession of love, and the ring, and now, police, false claims, potential handcuffs. Her chest tightened, a cold sweat breaking across her forehead. Sir, the officer continued, voice firm but controlled, I need you to come with me peacefully. You'll have the opportunity to explain your side. But until then, we have to follow the proper legal steps. Cashin shook his head, voice rising slightly despite his attempt at calm. This is absurd. She's lying. This is the same woman who framed Zara. She stole from me. She admitted she married me for money. The officer nodded again, expression unreadable. I understand your frustration, Mr. Ward. But legally, I have to follow protocol. Please cooperate. Any resistance could complicate matters. Cashin's eyes snapped back to Zara. Her wide, fearful gaze met his, and he felt his chest constrict with anguish. He wanted to shield her from this, to fix everything in a single instant. But the law, the lies, everything seemed to conspire against him. The officer reached for the handcuffs on his belt. The metal glinted ominously under the restaurant lights. Cashin's breath hitched. Patrons gasped audibly. Some whispered warnings, some cursed quietly, others simply watched in shock. The tension in the room thickened to suffocating levels. Zara's hands flew to her mouth. No, this can't be happening, she whispered, panic gripping her entire body. Cashin's eyes hardened, the fire of desperation and protective instinct igniting in him. He wouldn't go quietly. He couldn't let this happen, especially not with Zara watching, just as he had vowed he would protect her, make amends, and prove his sincerity. The officer held the handcuffs poised, the moment stretching unbearably long. Cashin exhaled slowly, forcing himself to stay calm. He didn't resist, but his hands flexed tensely at his sides as the officer approached with the handcuffs. He felt Zara's gaze on him, fierce, unwavering, protective in a way that startled him. Stop. Zara's voice rang out, cutting through the tense silence of the restaurant. Patrons turned in surprise, some whispering. He hasn't done anything wrong. He's innocent. Marilyn is the one lying, the one who stole from him, the one who ruined my life too. Her hands trembled, but her words carried conviction. She stepped closer to Cashin, refusing to let the officer take him without speaking up. Check her record. She's filed false claims before. She steals, she manipulates, and now she's trying to ruin him legally. The officer hesitated, glancing at his notebook. We'll have to verify that. I'll need details. Zara took a deep breath, determined. Her full name is Marilyn Ward. She's been reported for fraud multiple times. We can provide documentation. Look into it. You'll see she's the problem, not him. Cashin's chest tightened as he watched her. For the first time in months, someone was fiercely standing by him, not for his money, not for appearances, but because she believed in the truth. His heart ached with gratitude, shame, and admiration all at once. The officer's expression softened slightly, though he remained professional. He made a quick call to verify Marilyn's identity. Moments later, he raised his head, nodding grimly. It appears there's a significant history of fraud and false claims in her record. This will require follow-up, and it changes the situation considerably. Zara exhaled, her shoulders sagging slightly with relief. Cashin finally allowed himself to unclench his fists. Thank you, he whispered, voice low, almost reverent. I don't know what I would have done without you stepping in. Zara's gaze softened, though caution lingered. You should have protected me from the start, but I'm willing to hear you now. Just, don't make me regret it again. Cashin nodded, swallowing hard. I won't. I swear. The officer checked his phone. His brow furrowed. One moment. I'm getting a message from the precinct. Cashin and Zara both turned, tension snapping back like a taut wire. Patrons leaned forward, sensing the shift. The officer's eyes widened as he read the screen. He looked up, voice loud enough for everyone to hear. Marilyn Ward has just been arrested for fraud and filing false claims. She is in custody as of 10 minutes ago. The room erupted in murmurs, some shocked, some cheering quietly. Zara felt her knees weaken, relief mingling with disbelief. Cashin's jaw tightened, but a faint, hopeful smile broke through his tension. The storm that had haunted their lives for months was finally turning. Justice was finally catching up. But even in the midst of relief, uncertainty lingered. What came next, what would happen between them, remained unknown. And outside the restaurant walls, the world still waited, full of consequences yet to unfold. The restaurant seemed to breathe collectively, as if the tension that had gripped every corner for weeks, months even, was finally released. Patrons leaned back, murmurs of relief and excitement filling the room. Forks clinked against plates again, chairs creaked as people adjusted, and whispers of astonishment floated in the air. Cashin exhaled slowly, shoulders sagging with the weight of disbelief and relief. He had been cleared. His name, tarnished by lies and betrayal, had finally been restored. For the first time in months, he felt a lightness that almost made him dizzy. Zara remained by the counter, trembling slightly, still processing the events that had unfolded. Her hands gripped the edge of the counter, knuckles white. She had feared this moment for so long, feared it might never come. But now, standing here, watching Cashin rise from his knees, a sense of closure settled over her. The patrons began to applaud, some cheering, others offering heartfelt congratulations. Cashin smiled faintly, nodding politely, but his gaze never left Zara. He hadn't come to the restaurant for approval or applause. He had come for her. For the truth between them. Zara's chest ached, a mixture of relief, lingering anger, and tentative hope. She wanted to step back, to regain some composure, but her legs felt rooted to the spot. She couldn't deny the pull, the strange, undeniable bond that had formed between them through pain, truth, and vulnerability. Cashin finally stepped fully upright, his expression softer, more human than she had seen in months. His eyes searched hers, filled with a raw honesty she couldn't ignore. "Zara," he began, voice low, deliberate, every word weighted with intention. Her breath caught, heart pounding. The restaurant's cheers and murmurs faded into the background. All that existed was him, kneeling before her just moments ago, and now standing, ready to bridge the chasm of past mistakes. He took a slow step closer, the velvet box still in his hand, the world narrowing to the space between them. His gaze softened, pleading, vulnerable. "I've made mistakes," he admitted. "Horrible ones. I've failed you in ways I can never undo. But everything I feel, everything I know now, it's all because of you. I can't imagine another life without you in it." Zara's lips parted, unsure whether to speak or remain silent. Her mind raced, memories flashing, humiliation, betrayal, and the surprising moments of bravery and honesty he had shown. She felt the fragile thread of trust stretching taut, ready to either snap or hold. Cashin took another step closer, lowering his voice to a near whisper. "Zara. I need to ask you something. Something that will change everything for both of us. Will you?" He paused, letting the words hang, the restaurant holding its breath once more. Patrons leaned forward, some on the edge of their seats, sensing the culmination of months of heartbreak, betrayal, and revelation. Zara's heart raced faster than it ever had before. Every instinct screamed at her to listen, to hear him fully, to allow herself to hope. Cashin's eyes glistened under the restaurant lights. "Will you marry me?" The restaurant seemed suspended in time. Every patron, staff member, and onlooker held their breath, as if the world itself had paused to witness this moment. Cashin stood a few steps away, velvet box open in his hands, eyes locked on Zara with a vulnerability that made her chest ache. Zara's hands trembled. She could feel the weight of every memory pressing down, the humiliation, the lies, the months she had spent rebuilding her life. She thought of the late nights scrubbing floors, the cold nights she spent wondering if she would ever see justice, and the betrayal that had cut deeper than any words could describe. Cashin stepped closer, voice soft but resonant, carrying every ounce of sincerity he had left. "Zara. I know I don't deserve this. I don't deserve your forgiveness, your trust, or this moment. But I can promise you this, I will spend the rest of my life proving that I love you, that I am loyal to you, and that I will never let anyone hurt you again." Zara swallowed hard, tears threatening to spill. Her heart raced, caught between fear, hope, and the possibility of happiness she hadn't allowed herself to imagine in months. She wanted to say no, wanted to protect herself, wanted to hold on to the safety of solitude. But she also remembered the truth in his eyes, the tears, the unwavering honesty, the vulnerability that matched her own. I've been hurt," she whispered, voice barely audible. "I've been humiliated, lied to, and betrayed. I've lost so much, and I don't know if I can trust, if I can believe." Cashin knelt again, despite the room watching, despite the past months of tension and heartbreak. His hands opened the small box fully, the ring catching the light, sparkling as though it held the promise of every sunrise they had yet to see. "I don't expect an answer right now," he said gently, his voice breaking. "I only ask that you consider it. That you know this is real. That you know this, Amy, is real. You've endured so much, and yet you stand here stronger than ever. I can't change the past, but I want to build the future with you. Zara's eyes met his, and for a long moment, all the chaos, betrayal, and pain melted away. She felt the fragile spark of hope stir inside her, a spark she hadn't dared feel in months. The restaurant erupted in soft cheers, some clapping, some wiping tears from their eyes. Patrons smiled, whispered words of encouragement, and watched a story of injustice and redemption unfold in real time. Zara took a deep breath, steadying herself against the counter. Every muscle in her body quivered with anticipation. She thought of her journey, the trials she had survived, the strength she had discovered in herself. She thought of Cashin's unwavering honesty, his willingness to face the consequences of his mistakes, and his love, raw and exposed. She looked down at the ring, sparkling like a promise made in the middle of chaos, and then back at him, kneeling before her. And with the entire restaurant holding its collective breath, Zara took a deep breath and said, "Yes, but only if you're ready to face everything with me." If you were moved by Zara's journey and Cashin's redemption, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories that will make you gasp, cry, and cheer. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an emotional roller coaster like this. Share your thoughts in the comments. What would you do if you were in Zara's shoes? And remember, sometimes the most unexpected moments can change your life forever.